You're about to discover why Spartan husbands could legally vanish from their wives' lives forever, and the reason will make your blood run cold. This was something far more disturbing. A state-mandated system that treated women like breeding stock and marriage like a military operation. The whispers from ancient Sparta reveal a horrifying truth about what this civilization did to families in the name of creating perfect warriors. Before we dive into this systematic destruction of human bonds, if you're ready to uncover the darkest secrets of history, hit that like button now. Because what you're about to hear will shatter everything you thought you knew about one of history's most legendary civilizations. This is the story of how a society's obsession with strength transformed love into duty, marriage into breeding programs, and human beings into disposable tools in service of an impossible ideal. The practice was so brutal that even other Greek cities who weren't exactly gentle themselves found it shocking. Let's uncover the horrifying system that allowed Spartan husbands to abandon their wives, and why the state not only permitted it, but demanded it. In ancient Sparta, husbands sometimes vanished from their wives' lives. The reason reveals a shocking secret about strength, health, and the city's drive to create perfect warriors. Sparta was like a non-stop boot camp, a city where comfort and feelings had no place. Life revolved around rules, strength, and proving toughness at every turn. From birth, the state controlled everything. Weak babies were discarded. Strong babies were kept to grow into warriors. It was like a school where your survival grade decided if you ate lunch. Boys were taken from their families early to join the Agog, a harsh military training system. They ran, fought, and learned to survive hunger and pain. Girls also trained hard. They ran, wrestled, and prepared to have strong children. Happiness and comfort were ignored. Everyone had a job, and that job was making Sparta stronger. Spartan citizenship came with strict rules. Only the strong, healthy, and born to Sparta kids became citizens. Citizens had to serve in the army, follow laws, and put Sparta before themselves. Money, fame, and personal pleasures did not matter. Loyalty and toughness were the only things that counted. Even family life was controlled by the state. Husbands and wives had no freedom to live for themselves. Marriage and children existed to serve Sparta's needs. Life was like working at a company that demanded everything and gave nothing back. Sparta shaped people into soldiers first and humans second. Comfort and personal desire were ignored. Strength, loyalty, and survival were everything. Sparta's social system was harsh and relentless. Every part of life served the city. The state decided who lived, trained, and married. Individual wishes were unimportant. The city's needs were always first. This brutal system created strong warriors and obedient citizens. It showed how far a society could control lives to make itself stronger. In Sparta, marriage was less about butterflies and more about building the next generation of warriors. The state ran the matchmaking business like a strict HR department with zero tolerance for feelings or drama. Families didn't pick partners, the city did. The goal was simple: produce strong, healthy babies who could grow up to fight and survive anything. Romance was optional and mostly ignored. Men usually got married after turning 30, while women were barely adults, around 18 to 20. The age gap was normal and practical. Older men had spent years training, fighting, and surviving the brutal agoge, so they were expected to be strong and reliable. Younger women were valued for their health and ability to bear strong children. The marriage system treated people more like tools than partners, a necessary setup for Sparta's army-first lifestyle. Early marriage life was short on companionship and long on duty. Couples spent little time together because men were busy with military service, drilling, and keeping Sparta's reputation intact. Women managed households, stayed fit, and prepared to produce the strongest kids possible. Private life and intimacy were secondary to state needs. Life was fast, gritty, and controlled by the city at every step, like a game where the rules were made by someone who loved push-ups and hated naps. Even having children came with guidelines. Weak babies were frowned upon, and strong babies were celebrated like trophies. Husbands and wives acted more like co-workers on a high-stakes project than lovers. Every choice, from whom they married to how they raised children, was controlled by Sparta's obsession with power and survival. Marriage in Sparta was a brutal, funny, and sometimes absurd system that treated love and comfort as extras nobody asked for, while duty, strength, and producing warriors were mandatory. Every part of life served the state, and everyone played their role in keeping Sparta tough, disciplined, and legendary. Sparta's obsession with strength and toughness started at birth and didn't mess around. The city ran a full-on human boot camp before the humans even walked or talked. Babies were checked like products on a factory line, and anything weak or sickly was quietly removed from the equation. Sentiment and soft feelings were not part of the program. Only the strong, the healthy, and the fearless survived. Weakness had no place in Sparta, not in warriors, not in babies, and definitely not in the city's vision of perfection. If a wife gave birth to a child with any kind of physical defect or disability, the baby was labeled unfit and treated like a broken tool. There were no second chances, no comforting words, no gentle hugs. Babies who didn't meet Sparta's brutal standards were abandoned immediately, thrown into a system that cared more about muscles and stamina than tiny cries or soft cheeks. Survival and strength were everything, and weakness was not allowed anywhere near the city's future warriors. Spartans had very strict rules about what made a child unfit. A limp, a crooked finger, a weak body, or even a small illness could mark a baby as disposable. Parents, no matter how much they loved their child, were powerless. Sparta's law always came first. The state demanded perfect offspring, and personal feelings were just distractions. It was a world where duty to the city outweighed everything, including family, comfort, and sentimentality. The final step in this harsh system was Mount Taygetus, a steep, remote mountain outside the city. Babies deemed unfit were taken there and left to the elements, a cold and cruel finish to Sparta's perfection program. The mountain became a grim symbol of how serious Sparta was about strength, toughness, and survival. Exposure on Mount Taygetus was not hidden or secret. It was a clear message. Weakness had no place here. Sparta's abandonment practice was brutal, gritty, and relentless. Marriage and childbirth were measured only by one standard. Could this child grow into a strong warrior or not? Love, comfort, and family bonds were extras nobody asked for. The city ran life like a machine, and anyone who didn't fit was simply cut out. Weakness was a luxury Sparta could not afford, and survival, strength, and obedience always came first. In Sparta, making strong children was not a family choice, it was a city mandate. Husbands were expected to produce tough, healthy warriors, but sometimes nature didn't cooperate. When that happened, Sparta had a rule that would make modern marriage counselors faint. A husband could lend his wife to another man, usually an older, proven warrior, to father a stronger child. There was no drama, no hurt feelings recorded in history, just a pragmatic approach to keeping Sparta's army elite. Love, jealousy, and personal pride were irrelevant. The city ran reproduction like a military campaign, and everyone played their part. Plutarch, in his Life of Lycurgus, writes about this clearly. Husbands accepted it because Sparta demanded it. Women, trained to be strong, fit, and obedient, followed the city's rules without question. Marriage was more like a functional arrangement than a love story, and every action had a purpose. Produce warriors who could survive, fight, and defend the city. Personal feelings were secondary, and the state's obsession with strength came first. The practice shows how Sparta put the city above personal life. Husbands set aside pride, wives followed orders, and the child's future strength became the priority. Relationships were almost clinical, built for function over romance, like a well-oiled machine designed to crank out the next generation of soldiers. The arrangement may sound shocking today, but in Sparta, it was just another rule in a society where toughness, survival, and duty outweighed everything else. Sparta treated family, love, and intimacy as tools for the city's goals. Husbands, wives, and children all played roles in this gritty system. Strength and survival ruled every decision, and obedience was non-negotiable. Lending a wife for strong offspring was just part of the plan to keep Sparta tough, legendary, and impossible to beat. In Sparta, the city always came before the family, no questions asked. Personal happiness, love, and romance were low on the priority list. Marriage was not about holding hands or whispering sweet nothings. It was a duty, a state-mandated assignment to produce the next generation of strong warriors. The quality of the population mattered more than personal bonds, and Spartans accepted this harsh reality as part of life. Spartan men didn't move in with their wives right after marriage. They stayed in military barracks, training, fighting, and living the city's version of boot camp until they were 30. The state demanded this, and men obeyed. Meanwhile, their young wives stayed home, running households, keeping fit, and preparing to raise children strong enough to survive Sparta's brutal system. Love and companionship had to take a backseat to duty, and personal feelings were optional extras nobody asked for. Wives spent years alone, while their husbands lived the life of soldiers. The long separations were normal, expected, and entirely unromantic. Husbands visited only at night or during specific times, and even then, it was more about reproduction than building a relationship. The city treated marriage like a contract designed to strengthen the population, not a personal bond. Every action, every rule, and every choice was measured against the needs of Sparta rather than the happiness of its citizens. This system shows how Sparta valued duty over personal life. Family existed for the state, not the other way around. Husbands, wives, and children all played roles in a city where strength, survival, and obedience were mandatory. Love was a bonus, intimacy was scheduled, and personal desires were irrelevant. Sparta's version of marriage was gritty, practical, and ruthless, designed to keep the population strong, the warriors unbeatable, and the city itself untouchable. In Sparta, marriage was less about love and more about producing the next generation of warriors. Couples who could not have children were not left to grieve or hope for miracles. The city had strict rules to make sure that every marriage served the state's goal of creating strong, healthy offspring. If a wife could not bear children with a husband, she could be paired with another man, either chosen by a husband or by the state itself. Personal feelings were irrelevant. The goal was always the same: strong babies who could grow into powerful Spartans. In some rare but recorded cases, even brothers shared a wife to ensure that children were born. The practice seems shocking by modern standards, but in Sparta it was just another way the city maintained its obsession with strength and survival. Husbands accepted these arrangements because loyalty to the state came first, and personal pride or jealousy was considered secondary. Women, trained from a young age to follow Sparta's rules and prioritize the city above themselves, carried out their duties without complaint. Marriage was functional, reproduction was a mission, and love or romance was treated as a bonus if it happened to appear. The system of infertile marriages shows how far Sparta put the state above individual desires. Every part of married life was measured against the needs of the city, from sexual relations to childbirth. Husbands and wives were expected to be pragmatic, obedient, and willing to follow the rules. Personal choice was limited, and family bonds were often reshaped to serve the larger goal of producing warriors. Sparta's approach to infertile marriages was harsh, practical, and relentless. Duty, strength, and survival always came first. Love, comfort, and personal preference were considered luxuries that had no place in a society obsessed with building the toughest, most unbeatable population imaginable. Having a son was not just a family matter, it was a duty to the city. Sons were the future warriors who would protect Sparta and keep its army strong, so couples felt a lot of pressure to have boys. Marriage was judged by results, and wives who had only daughters or no children were seen as failing. The city cared more about strong sons than daughters. Women who did not have sons often faced shame. The community expected them to give birth to boys, and failure could lead to gossip, criticism, and lower social status. Husbands were expected to follow the city's rules too, which sometimes meant allowing another man to father a child to make sure a male heir was born. Personal feelings and comfort did not matter as much as the city's needs. Sparta treated having children as a duty, not a personal choice. Marriage and family life revolved around producing strong male warriors. Women were trained to obey the rules, and the consequences for not having sons were serious and public. Duty to Sparta came first, leaving little space for love, personal happiness, or family bonds. Strength, survival, and the city's goals were always more important than personal feelings. In Sparta, women were valued mostly for their ability to have strong children, and once they passed childbearing age, the city considered them less useful. Wives who could no longer produce children were often abandoned or replaced by younger, more fertile women. This harsh reality reflected Sparta's focus on strength and survival, above personal bonds or emotions. Love, loyalty, and companionship were secondary to the city's goal of creating warriors. The replacement of older wives with younger women shows the practical, almost clinical way Sparta treated marriage. Women were seen as tools for producing the next generation, and once they could no longer fulfill that role, they were often discarded. This made the lives of Spartan women highly conditional. Their value depended largely on fertility, health, and ability to produce strong children. Sparta's approach to age and fertility highlights the city's ruthless attitude toward personal relationships. Marriage and family life were less about love or partnership, and more about duty to the state. Women were disposable once their reproductive years ended, showing just how far Sparta prioritized the needs of the city over individuals. Strength, survival, and the production of warriors always came first, leaving personal feelings and bonds as secondary, optional, and often ignored. Sparta was not like other Greek cities, and it made sure everyone knew it. The leaders justified harsh family rules by saying the army came first, and resources had to go to warriors, not ordinary people. Religion and culture cheered them on, treating strong babies and soldiers like sacred projects. For women, life could be brutal. Abandoned wives faced loneliness, social shame, and no legal backup. Money and status often vanished, along with a husband's attention, leaving them vulnerable. For the city, the obsession with strength created a tough, cold culture where emotions were optional and personal bonds were weak. Families were reshaped to serve Sparta, and citizens learned that duty, survival, and warriors mattered far more than love, comfort, or ordinary life.